I've been chasing a look that lets my travel stories breathe, that turns pixels into feeling and footage into film. And I think I found a way with one tool in my grade. Let me show you the world of Dehancer. Hi everyone, my name is Yobel, and I aim to share the best of the world with the rest of the world through my lens. For today's video, we'll talk about Dehancer. Recently I started taking cinematography seriously, and this tool helped me level up my color grading and creative process. Dehancer is a third-party plugin that emulates classic film looks, and it's what I use to grade my latest projects, including my wildlife short documentary on the channel. Bottom line, I really like Dehancer, and if you stick through this video, I'll share how it fits in my workflow, my favorite features and tips, and whether it's worth the money. And full disclaimer, I'm not being paid for this video, all opinions are mine. Dehancer did give me access to the software, which I've tested extensively over the past couple months, as well as a promo code, YOBELPRIZE, which you can use to get 10% off at checkout. All they want in return is an honest review, and that's it. Also, I'm fairly new to color grading and filmmaking, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. So with that out of the way, let's get started. First, let me break down how I use Dehancer in my creative workflow. Then we'll walk through the key features using one of my travel shots. I've shared a link in the description if you want to download my power grade template and the Dehancer LUTs for free. For my workflow, I use Dehancer within DaVinci Resolve, but it works on all the major video and photo editing softwares. Now let's start with where I place Dehancer in my node tree. For simplicity, nodes are DaVinci's method of chaining your edits in a non-destructive sequential system. And you can see I placed it towards the end of my node tree, usually right before I convert my color space into Rec 709. Normally, I'll do my color corrections first, followed by color grading within DaVinci, and then I'll apply Dehancer as a final pass for a potential creative look. For the sake of stress testing the product for this review, I tested to see if I can actually do the entire color grading within a single Dehancer node. So besides some basic color corrections, all of the grading process was done with only Dehancer. First thing I'll note is Dehancer does an excellent job of making the plugin user-friendly and intuitive, with key sections that you generally work through top to bottom as they place them. For instance, the first collapsible section is called Input, and that's where you match the source to your project timeline's color space. I work within DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, so that's what I select. Then I choose a film stock profile. Dehancer has crafted dozens of looks that emulate classic film stocks, which you can choose from, and they do update it regularly. I'll list a few of my favorite profiles in the description of the video, but really it's up to your style. You can also adjust the push-pull slider, which simulates how long you quote-unquote develop the footage. And one thing to note is you'll need to check the box at the bottom of each section to enable the features. Next, in the film developer section, you can adjust the contrast and boost colors. I tend to prefer adjusting contrast with DaVinci's native tools, but I do use the color boost often to make the colors pop just a bit more. Film compression is great as it tames the harsh digital highlight edge and lets you place the white point where you want it, and I do love pushing the tonal range and color density sliders to the right for a richer feel, and then I'll adjust the impact and white point until the roll-off feels a bit more natural without going milky. I rarely use the expand section, but it's handy if the footage lifted after compression, but I tend to use the analog range limiter in the next section called print when I need to keep the luminance inside a more classic film range. So now that we're in print, this is where you get that nice finishing touch, the color grading effect. So unlike the film stock profiles, here there's just a handful of options, and I'm not versed in the history of film. I believe the Fujifilm 3513 and Kodak 2383 profiles, they're what cinema films were printed onto, whereas the Kodak Endura glossy paper technically is simulating a type of photo print style. But regardless, Dehancer gives you all three as options to mimic those classic looks. And after choosing the profile, I tend to increase the color density and then drop the saturation as needed if the effect is too much. Side note, I think Kodak 2383 is the crowd favorite, but it's about your style, so feel free to go against the grain. Speaking of grain, we'll get into that in a second, but let me also point out the color head section. If I need a nudge toward warm highlights or cool shadows, I'll use it lightly, but most of the time I still prefer DaVinci's native color slice panel for more surgical color adjustments. So quick pause, all of these steps so far are focused on grading your colors. The next set of sections focus more on texture and film effects. I treat all of these as stylistic choices for specific sequences and not as defaults. With that said, the 4 I tend to use the most include film grain, halation, bloom, and vignette. For grain, I prefer to keep it subtle using either 35 or 65mm, and for this project I kept everything with a 65mm ISO 50 look for just a touch of grain. Halation adds a warm fringe on bright highlights, and bloom creates a halo around your brights, which is nice on windows and backlighting. There's also a section called overscan, which has fun frame lines if you want that theatrical nod. And in fact, I used it for parts of my chimpanzee documentary film and my Nikon ZR product review. And they're both on my channel, which you definitely should check out after finishing this video. And there you go. All of my color grading process was done with just a single node using Dehancer. Also, to truly stress test it, I did this same exercise on over 80 of my travel clips, ranging from wildlife, portraits, mixed lighting, close-ups, outdoors, and low-light environments. And Dehancer worked successfully across them all. Before we get into some useful tips and tricks, let me bring up a few things I wish Dehancer would change to make for a better user experience. The first is choosing between film stock profiles. There are dozens of options to select from, but the UI is quite tedious to switch between them, basically requiring spam clicking and scrolling through the list, which frustrated me to no end, especially when you're working with so many clips. But I did discover a workaround which I'll go over in a second. The other suggestion is if there was a way to easily choose what the default settings are when you're dragging Dehancer onto a node, such as which sections are enabled or disabled, which profile is selected, and so on. I can fake it by saving it as part of a power grade, but I would love a proper set as default type option. And lastly, I'd like to copy and paste by section. For instance, let me copy just my grain settings or just the print settings to another clip without overriding the rest. Now let's go over some useful things to know. Let's start with quickly browsing through the film stock profiles. First, click and open up the profile drop-down menu, and once you're in here, just use your up and down arrows on your keyboard to move between profiles and hit enter to select. So long as you keep your mouse hovering over the profile section, you can copy this action to quickly go between looks. You can thank me later or by liking my channel and subscribing. There are 2 ways you can quickly check a before and after effect of your adjustments. On a Mac, just click on the Dehancer node and hit Command D to disable and enable the node. The other way is to go to the output section within Dehancer and adjust the total impact slider between 0 and 100. If you're having playback issues because the edits are heavy, check to see if the quality under the options section is set to high or normal. For playback, normal should help, and then for rendering, I make sure it's set to high quality. I briefly mentioned before, but probably the tonal range slider is my favorite to increase as it leads to a bit of a thicker, denser color look. Just make sure to adjust the impact and white point to compensate. Analog range limiter is a nice way to get help controlling your highlights and your shadows from being clipped. And another useful tool is the false color IRE, which is a bit of a sleeper feature, as you can use it basically as a standalone tool to check skin exposure and clipping even when you're not using any film stock. It's basically a built-in reality check. Dehancer regularly updates their software and adds new film stock profiles to use, and you can download the latest profiles simply by clicking Check Profiles in the Options section towards the bottom to access them. And final tip which I got from a chatter during one of my live streams is create 2 Dehancer nodes in your power grade node tree, one for the color grading effects and a second for texture effects like grain, halation, bloom, and vignette. That makes it super easy to toggle the film effects without touching the colors or vice versa. Anytime you can do fewer clicks while you're editing, that's time well saved. So here's my final thoughts. If you're a beginner or want to create cinematic film looks, Dehancer is absolutely worth it. It's an intuitive tool, it's constantly being updated, can essentially take care of your entire color grading process, and it comes with all sorts of bonus features to make the grading process fun and creative. If you're a pro-level colorist, you can probably live without it, but it's definitely something I'm keeping in my toolkit. As a thank you for watching this video, I've included links to download my power grade template, as well as some Dehancer LUTs I generated in the making of this video. And again, if you want to grab Dehancer, use promo code YOBELPRIZE to get 10% off. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, or feel free to chat with me live during my daily live streams. And if you want to see more of my content, I do hope you'll like and subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so wish me luck. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.